they talk about 4 different types of yoga practices. And they say there's bhakti yoga. Have you guys heard of these? Bhakti yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga. They talk a lot about these 4 different practices of yoga. And a lot of people now, they say there's a different type of practice. You can pick which one is suitable to your nature. The bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion. It includes practices like doing the kirtan, singing spiritual song, chanting, doing worship, preparing flower garlands in the temple to offer to the deity, even sweeping the temple, cleaning it up, cooking for the deity, singing, whatever, all these worshipful practices that increase our devotion, our bhakti. And through that path, it's possible to realize God. Or the karma yoga is a yoga of service, yoga of action. You may go out and serve people. You could open a soup kitchen, feed hungry people as your service. And the practice there would be seeing that God is in all those people that you serve. And so some people say that's a different type of yoga practice you could do. And then there's the Raja Yoga practice, which is very popular. This is the physical practices, like practicing Yama and Niyama, asana, the physical poses, the Pranayama, breathing practices and things, is Raja Yoga. And then there's Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge, so to speak, which is meditation, introspection. People often misunderstand that, and they think it's reading books. I'll read a book and realize God, which won't happen. Not sure it's probably ever happened. Someone who's just reading a book and thinking about it. But people with a very intellectual mind get drawn to this path. They say, oh, I'll just practice Jnana Yoga. I'm going to read books because I like thinking. But the way my teacher spoke of those practices, nowadays they say it's 4 different practices. Pick the one that you're inclined toward. But my teacher used to say that these are successive practices. At first you need to practice the karma yoga to develop compassion. And then you need to practice the bhakti yoga to get devotion. And then you practice Raja Yoga to cause the mind and body to get in line. And then you practice Jnana Yoga by meditating, and then you realize God. Patanjali described yoga in a process of 8 successive steps. And from the same tradition, those 4 practices were described as 4 successive steps within the practice. If you've heard of Ashtanga Yoga, Ashta means 8, Anga means limbs. There's 8 different steps or 8 different practices. Ashtanga Yoga is also now a modern style of yoga started by some teacher. They use that name. I'm not sure they've trademarked that name. They talk about Ayurveda as an Ashtanga system also. A system with 8 limbs. One of the big texts in Ayurveda is the Ashtanga Hridayam, the heart of the Ashtanga, the 8-limbed science. But Patanjali described yoga as a 8-limbed practice. And so we don't focus on all of these anymore necessarily, and it's very important. We're going to, in our next few talks, we're going to be talking in depth about each of these limbs. Because a lot of them are left out of the practice now. The first one is Yama. And Yama means a restraint. It means control or restraint. And these are certain practices that we do. It's like ahimsa. We try to restrain ourselves from being violent and hurting other people or things around us to the extent that we can. You might have to walk on the grass and hurt it a little bit. But you try to restrain yourself from doing certain things like that. Patanjali listed 5 yamas that I'll go into that on a different day. Tirumular in the same lineage listed 10. and other yoga authors have listed 10. We get a better sense of it by looking at all 10, so we'll do that. And then there's the niyamas. These are observances. Kind of the opposite of the yama, but it's very similar. These are things you want to do without restraint. Like worshiping the Lord, like being content. It's interesting. We tell yoga students now, you'll get contentment and peace, mental peace, by doing yoga practice. But Patanjali said the opposite. He said, you've got to practice being peaceful, contentment. You have to have contentment. And then can you do the third step, asana, the physical postures. Patanjali had 2 lines on asana in his whole text. And it basically says, sit comfortably. Which is, that's all you need to say, really. But that can be complicated. People have a lot of difficulty to do that. I see yoga teachers trying to sit, they come to a talk I'm giving, they'll be sitting. They're the worst sitters out of all of us sometimes. Indian people are great. They're used to it. They call it Indian style when you sit like this, and there's a reason for that. They're in practice. They know what they're doing. They can sit like this pretty well. The yoga teachers, they'll be getting up like, ooh, my leg fell asleep. There's, moving around the whole time. Even though the purpose of the asana is to sit. Sit comfortably. But so there's the physical practices that causes the body to be able to sit without distraction. And then there's the pranayama. This is our 4th step here, pranayama, the breathing practice. All kinds of different breathing practice. They can calm the mind. So now the mind no longer will be a distraction in our meditation. And then we have pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawal of the senses. So as we're redirecting the senses from the external to the internal reality, from the gross to the subtle. There can be some practices for these, but we're getting to a place where it's not so much of a physical practice anymore. It's something that starts to happen as you're doing certain practices. Then we have dharana, concentration. We have dhyana, meditation. This is our 7th step. And 8th step is samadhi, which is union. Yoga means union. It's uniting your consciousness with the divine, uniting yourself with God, uniting the jiva with Shiva. And so concentration, there can be practices that help us to concentrate. Once we can concentrate, that gets extended, it turns into meditation. Once we meditate and the ego self comes out, differentiation between you as the observer and the thing you're observing starts to disappear, and you're united with it. And all knowledge of that thing comes. There's not really meditation is not a practice. People say, I'm practicing my meditation. I'm doing a meditation practice. But you can't really practice meditation. There are techniques that help prepare us for meditation. But it's not really a meditation when you sit there and you focus on the breath, or you say Om, Om. It's not that you're meditating, you're practicing to prepare yourself for meditation. Meditation is something that just kind of happens. When we've prepared ourselves through these other practices. So all of these steps are important, and some may be more important for some people than for others. We can't necessarily realize God just doing the asanas. It's important to realize. I've met some yoga teachers who think that they're making great spiritual progress by doing an asana practice. Meanwhile, they have a lot of struggles in their life they're not trying to work on. They're having arguments with their family, they don't want to resolve that. They're angry with their family members, they don't want to release that resentment. They're struggling with their eating habits and suffering, their health is suffering, they don't want to work on that. They have some stupid thought that by doing the aerobics practice it will resolve all of their problems and lead them to a higher state of realization. Like Christians who go to church on Sunday and they think they pray so now all their sins are washed away. They'll go out on Monday and start doing the same sinful deeds they were doing before. It doesn't necessarily happen that way. If you do the yoga asanas with the right awareness, with the right intention, maybe it can lead you to a lot of opening, awakening, but in this yoga practice we teach, we do more than just asana. We do some chanting, we do some spiritual teaching, we do some breathing practices, some meditations, so that practice altogether can lead someone to a higher awareness. If you did the asanas in the right way, maybe it could lead to awakening. If you did it with the right intention, with the right humbleness, with the willingness to face the faults within and allow them to come up and sort them out, it could help. But generally, asana was not created for that purpose. The asanas do have some tendency to open us up to a higher awareness a little bit, but the practice of asana was not given for that purpose. So we've got to practice all the different steps in yoga. We've got to realize that, Patanjali said, he didn't say that asana will bring you contentment. It's not the best thing for that, to have a calm mind. Asana practice is not the best practice. Walking in the woods probably would be more calming. Or some breathing exercises are way more calming. Many things could be much more calming and relaxing. Rubbing sesame oil, if you're ungrounded, rubbing sesame oil into your feet will probably be much more grounded than doing the yoga asanas. We should remember, Patanjali said, we've got to be calm. Then we can practice the asanas. Not that the asanas will give us calmness and the other benefits that any aerobics could give us. When we practice yoga in that way, thinking that, we'll get probably even lesser benefits than that. I've seen again and again and again that ballet dancers and people like this have much greater awareness of their body, much greater control of their body than yoga teachers. In India, the thought was the yogi was the person who was the master of his mind, master of his body, and there's yogis in India, they can stop their heart. They can lower their body temperature 10 degrees, they can raise it 5 degrees, because they have this kind of mastery over their body. Then we have yoga teachers here in the US, they're doing flips. Not even really impressive flips. I see the yoga teachers and it's like, okay, yeah. See, because when I was a child, my parents took me to Cirque du Soleil. These Canadian people, they do some flips that will really impress you. Unlike anything these yoga people do. And so, for all these purposes, these lesser purposes, yoga is not well suited. But when we do it with this higher aspiration for realization as a part of the greater system of yoga, it can transform our lives, transform our existence, change our sense of who we are. We go into the practice surrounded by darkness. And we come out of it seeing that the source of light in the universe is within us. The Upanishads say, the light in the sun, the light that makes the sun shine, is the same light shining within the human soul. And this is the purpose of yoga, not to help us understand that intellectually, but to help us to experience that.